Mortal Kombat 11 tutorial shenanigans, at least for today. And today we're looking at my boy, Kotal Kahn. I'm actually going to go switch sides real quick because, there, now it makes sense. Your boy Kotal has a lot going for him. For one, he has the most health of any character in Mortal Kombat 11. He boasts 10% more health than most characters, and he even has more health than Shao Kahn. And that's going to be very important later on. He also has been stealthily buffed over the years, or over the months, I should say. So he went from one of the lowest tiered characters in the game to arguably just outside of top 10. This guy is really strong now. And speaking of really strong, let's talk about any unique crushing blow shenanigans that we have to watch out for, and his wake up and hop attacks, because that is what is key. Just gotta make sure that I'm not missing anything. Okay. Now, Kotal Kahn again with the poor turtle. You're mean, Frank. You're fired. Anyway, Kotal Kahn has 2 crushing blow throws, and they have the same requirement, and they come front or back. Actually, while I'm at it, I'm also going to switch Jade's variation, just so that we can kind of switch it up a little bit and see what's different. I didn't do it with Kotal last time, but it is what it is. But like I said, he's able to crushing blow off of both forward and back throw. But as of the update that prevents both of those, he can only pick and choose. Rising Mezquita. Again, really hard to say. I do apologize. Let's see if I can set this up. Alright, so, Rising Mezquita. His wake up / flawless block launcher. And Sonatia burst. I can actually land it. A relatively good ranged invincible wake up. Both start up at about 10 frames. And they're actually pretty strong overall. Kotal Slam uses his big meat hook things to give a little more to give decent range, and they start up at 12 frames. But Critical Kick is 9 frames and has slightly more range. So you'll be using Critical Kick out of your short hops more often, unless you want to catch an opponent with Kotal Slam. Now let's talk combos. These are all Aztec based, so I do apologize if I mess them up. Okay. Soleil. This attack is a pretty standard 8-frame punish for Kotal Kahn, and it's one of Kotal's few safe strengths. If Jade were blocking, which I'm gonna set to real quick. Committing to the string leaves him at +1. The jab is -2, and missing that is -6, meaning it's punishable by anybody whose name is Raijin Raiden. Quasquilla comes off of a 10-frame high that reaches pretty decently well. 2 of these are needed to hit from the start of the round, but it's really strong range regardless. The second hit is a mid, and then the third hit's an overhead. If it counters or punishes an opponent, you get a crushing blow that launches. And I demonstrated that when we were talking about V3 Jade and how to counter it. Metzli ends it early with a low, meaning that Kotal can make himself relatively safe. Just want to re-record this. Block high for a second, block low for a second, block high for a second. He's now -5 instead of, if he overcommits to this, being -16. And being -3 across the board. So He can catch a standing opponent who's trying to catch the overhead. But if the opponent manages to duck this, it's not the end of the world. He's -5. Nobody can punish at -5, so not the end of the world if that hits. So it's actually not a bad option to go for instead of doing this, because this also does more damage overall. Kotal strikes, starts high, and can kind of launch at the mid-screen. But you're really just using this in the corner in order to get damage. But you can dash in with a forward 1 to get combo damage. We'll talk about that move later. Mahui Ziquez, I think I said that right, starts off of this mid. And yeah, that's a mid. A really far-reaching mid. In fact, it reaches from start of the match plus a step, which means it's got ridiculous range for a mid. And then if he is willing to commit, this string knocks down the opponent and keeps Kotal pretty close. However, overcommitting this string is dangerous because it's -7 on its own. The second hit is also -7. And if he overcommits, it's -14. So you have to find a way to keep yourself relatively safe. Whether through parry, through something else, you have to keep that in mind. Metsikuya, which, is that something that we've already seen? No, it's not. Involves this attack again. But it involves this. A far-reaching high with just under the same amount of range as forward 2. But this can launch meterlessly and knock the opponent back. Or, if you feel like the opponent's going to try and is overcommitted to the ducking, wallop him with the overhead, which clears the ground with how he jumps up, so some lows will actually miss Kotal when he does this attack, giving him a good chunk of distance to boot. Just be wary of that. Shoto, I would recommend using as part of your combo ender in the corner, because it does decent damage on its own. And allows you to socket in more damage than doing this, which is more reliable on at the mid screen. But as far as damage goes, Shotel is the way to go for special cancelable damage in the corner. And then Melahuak starts off of this advancing low, which is just under start of the match range, and then you can commit to the big boot. Now, the thing about this is, remember that Kotal is not plus when he does this. Either the big boot or the short kick, which leaves him at -5. Also, he is technically safe when he does this, but he still has a lot of recovery. But stopping midway through with Metsikuya leaves him in danger. In fact, if this blocks, your best option is to fully commit, because otherwise you're in some serious trouble, my friend. Also, MVP standing 4 is a high -1 and now can begin combos or extend them in the corner. Now let's talk special moves. Let's start Universal 2. Oh wait, yeah. Kotal Parry is a parry attack, as you would expect. But, unlike just about every other parry in the game, Kotal Kahn can parry just about anything he wants to. Parry a projectile, parry some jumping attacks, parry lows, or parry this. So, parry this, parry a projectile. Oh wait, he can't parry jumping attacks, my mistake. Or can he? I swear he could. Okay, he can't parry jumping attacks. That's really good to know. But if the opponent is grounded, then he can parry said attack. Just gonna wait for this sequence. If the opponent is grounded, Kotal will be able to parry it. And when he parries it, for a brief period of time, he sees increased damage. Now, the damage increase isn't actually that much. It's about 25%. So it's decent, but it's nothing to write home about. Or is it 25%? Yeah, it is 12. It is 25%. That same combo did 5% less damage, so that allows combos to kick in. But here's the kicker. This acts as a flawless block, too. So if a move would become more unsafe during a flawless block, it also becomes unsafe during Kotal parry, meaning that he gets a buff going, which is scary. Yeye Kame Disc is a standard projectile. Nothing to write home about, but it's a pretty standard, fairly decently damaging projectile. However, if this counters or punishes any attack at maximum range, it gets a crushing blow. And they even allowed a little bit of buffer room, so you can be like a step or two closer than full screen and still get it. I'm just going to quickly make sure that I'm not missing any crushing blows. I don't think so. Yeah, so we're good. Jolal Quake is one of the slowest attacks in the game at 41 frames. But it's 100% unblockable and is extremely dangerous. Let's say the opponent parries that, and you want the damage from this, but you know they're good enough to parry to avoid getting tripped like that. Well, what do? You fake them out. I can't tell you how many times online I've caught people with this. They go to duck, but but instead they eat 8% damage. And that's not all. If the Kotal parry, if the Quake hits, so will the overhead amplify. Even though it looks like it really shouldn't. Hell, at this range... Here, I'll even backdash a little bit. Even at this range, I can still hit you with the sword. But the overhead is also slow as hell at 36 frames. So this attack is really good for catching opponents. Like, this is the epitome of don't throw it out willy-nilly. When Cassie Cage's Fatal Blow can punish this raw, that's a problem. So you're going to want to do this to opponents that are grounded or opponents that you knock down in order to keep up pressure. Because maybe they don't have the meter to wake up, or they'll try to roll away. You can catch them with the Quake, and then wallop them. That's it for universal moves. Now let's talk abilities. Let's get the elephant out of the room for this variation Ascension. This is why I don't play this variation. God Ray. Awful. I mean, the Sunbeam itself is really good. It heals Kotal by 0.5% of his health for every tick that he's in, and damages the opponent by about the same amount if they're standing in it. But that's not all. If both Kotal and the opponents are standing inside of it, the damage is actually increased. Why? Because Kotal Kahn does more damage in the sun. He does 20% more damage in the sun than normal. So, he could do something like this. He could do something like this. And punish you, and make you eat 30% reliably this way. My only gripe with God Ray is that, unlike other versions of this attack that you get in the other variations, you cannot amplify this. Which is silly, because the amplify is so good with the other suns, and the fact that it natively just drops it on your head, that God Ray in this variation is useless. At least to me. I say useless, it's a bit of a misnomer. I mean that in the sense of, it's so much worse than the base version that I don't see why this is an ability in the first place. Why is this an Ascension? It should have been gone. It should have been replaced with one of the totems or something. What isn't useless is Kahn Cut. You sacrifice Kotal's armor break. Shit, I completely forgot to talk about, well, I'm gonna remember to add it in now. Shadow Kick, Jade's armor break is Shadow Kick, which is universal. And if Shadow Kick breaks armor from either Breakaway or from Fatal Blow, she gets a Crushing Blow for free. If she hasn't used up the Crushing Blow already. I completely forgot to talk about that in Jade video. Hopefully I remember to add it in. Anyway, Kahn Cut. This replaces Kotal Kahn's armor break, but it's a meterless combo extender. The caveat is it scales pretty hard. So you can do something like this, but it's almost better to just do this. Almost. Fortunately, the damage that Kahn Cut gets itself mitigates the damage scaling at least by a somewhat decent amount. Poor turtle. But yeah, this also can't be amplified, but it doesn't need to be. It's actually pretty decent. Then there's Hui Hui, Kotal Kahn's command grab. Drink the blood once, Kotal Kahn gets a 10% increase to his damage. Drink the blood again, it becomes 25%. Do it a third time, and Kotal Kahn gets 33%. The brightness of his tattoos indicates what level he's on. As the timer wears down, 10 seconds per level, you'll see that the tattoos begin to steadily get darkened. And the darker they get, the less power Kotal Kahn has, until eventually he reverts to level 0 and has to do the command grabs all over again. But that's actually not necessary. He can refresh the buff every time he does the command grab. The command grab is the star attraction of Ascension, by the way. And your combos with this bad boy, you get good damage. You can amplify it as well to choose where you want to put the opponent as well for extra damage. Do it again to get more damage. And in the corner, this becomes absolutely ridiculous. Let's say we do this. We'll just do this, because I don't think we need to do much more. Or even better. There we go. There we go. The damage that you get off of this is absolutely insane. And unlike almost every buff in the game except for Jax's heated up arms, this buff lasts through what are called cinematic events. Things like if I were to use an interactable, the buff doesn't go away. If I were to crushing blow, the buff doesn't go away. If I were to use fatal blow, the buff won't go away. Unlike every other buff in the game, everything from Scorpion Spear to Jade's dodging shadows to Kotal's own totem, those go away. But the Ascension command grab buff does not. This is why you play Ascension if you're just starting out as Kotal Kahn. It's generally a good place to start with Kotal. But here's the thing. For the longest time, Kotal Kahn wasn't actually able to tick into this. Outside of things like pokes. But now, he can actually tick into it off of 1-2. Turning this block string into something scary. I can't tick into it off of standing 3, and I also I can tick into it off of the jab as well, but I can't tick into it off of anything else. A tick grab, by the way, is what happens when an opponent hits the opponent when you hit the opponent on block, and then you still can get your command grab because of certain properties that allow it to happen. Meaning that you can trap the opponent in a block stun and go for this. However, just like how you usually can't do this on hit on the ground, most strings won't let you do it on block. So that's something you got to watch out for. Now let's talk about variation 2. my personal favorite variation of Kotal Kahn. Totemic Kotal Kahn. Man, I love this variation. It's the thing that got me to play online in the first place, and it's one of my favorite things I've ever seen in a Mortal Kombat game, period. Now, first, before we begin, I want to talk about the two changes that you will see in other variations, in Variation 3 as well. First off, the Sunbeam now summons on Kotal at all times. This is infinitely better than God Ray. But what's more, I can amplify it and send the Sunbeam towards the opponent. And in case you're curious, yes, it will track the opponent's every movement, meaning I can move with the Sunbeam and move just alongside them in order to keep them in a bad situation. So, I could do something like this. Pseudo meterless, technically it only cost me half a bar because of the regen, 30%. Now, here's the thing about that attack I did there, the Mesquita attack. It breaks armor, and it does decent damage on its own. But for me, its main attraction is how long the sawing animation lasts, because this can be handy for other things. For instance, let's just do this raw. Let's just have this happen and see what does more damage. 165 base damage, right? Versus 190. So it gets pretty close instead of the drastic difference of 110 to 160. The gap is shortened. And especially for combos, it's generally better if you want to preserve your meter. Because if you just want to get a little bit of meter back, this is just as good, basic, for that as it is to amplify. However, the main attraction of this attack now is that this had a crushing blow requirement of anti-airing, of punishing an aerial attack. Not bad, but now it has a secondary requirement that allows for the same effect. Break someone's armor. You catch a breakaway or a fatal blow with this, you get 33%, no problem. And remember that the real cheddar with this attack is how easy it is. Watch. I'm gonna do this, and then catch them, as even though they were breaking away literally as soon as possible. And yes, that does mean that, theoretically, I can do stuff like, oh wait, that's right, I can't do that and have breakaway. But, ooh, how about this then? Breakaway on, get up on, Heaven's Heal. Wait, wake up attacks cost meter. That's right, oh no. Oh, this could work. Look at that, 550, almost 56% damage on Jade. That is insanity. This is one of the best armor breaks in the game, bar none, if you have meter. Just land this and smash. And this is in Variation 3 as well, so be mindful of that. But the real star attraction for me when it comes to Totemic is the cat. Full screen, 11%. Gotta make Jade not break away. I said don't break away. There we go. And it has this weird property where at max range and online, it'll hit twice. To add, you know, because you want more damage off of this attack as well. It'll hit twice here, sometimes, at from start of the match range. But the thing is that this used to be hella punishable. Now it's basically safe if the opponent blocks this. And as if that weren't enough, Amplify buffs the damage and makes the cat invincible to projectiles. And look at how close Kotal is now. I can go for this, I can dash in. Kotal is left really close to the opponent. And doing decent damage in the process. And this gives me an alternate combo ender. Look at that. Already almost to the corner and at 23%. Air Tekwani Pounce, which can also be done off of interactables, is an 8% mid. That can cross up. Amplify to turn it to 12%. And I believe also make it projectile invincible as well. What this is really good for is catching opponents that are expecting a jump in. Because you'll do the jump in and then do another jump in, and wha-bam, you're eating more damage. Now, Etztil, the Etztil totem, or the blood totem, is a very interesting beast. On its own, Kotal Kahn will recover 3/8 or 37.5% of the damage that he deals. So if I did 3/8, 3, 4, 5, 6, hold on, that's 2, right? So I just have to do this 4 times. 1, 2, 3, 4. So I did 80 total damage to Jade, so I should be getting 37.5, I believe, if I did my math right. 33. So it's actually, that's right, I have to do it 5 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now I've landed that 5 times. I did 10% damage to Jade, and I recover a little more than that. Interesting. The math in my head always worked out to be about 37.5% of the meter of the regen. I wonder if it is about that. Anyhow, you recover health from the damage that you do. But if Jade were to hit me, the counter resets. But I can reset the timer if I do it for a little bit, do some attacks, then do this, get a little bit of health back, do this again, gain more health back, 75%. And then with all 3 totems, I gain more health back than damage I've dealt. About 9/8, that's an extra 12.5%. See? So, let's say we get 3 totems up. And then I do this. Look at that. I went from almost fatal blow to almost full health instantly. But you need to manage your totems pretty well. You need to get your blocks on, and then when you get a punish, set it up, and then go to town. And then get your lovely health back. But it gets even cooler. Remember what I said earlier about buffs popping? That's true for the totems, but uniquely, this is to the benefit of blood totems, because when they pop, they heal you. So, if you armor break, you get a little bit of health back. You don't get the crushing blow damage back, but suppose that you did this beforehand. Maybe you had the sun up too. And then let's say you did this, they launched, they wanted to break away, tough shit, you're back at almost full health. This is the epitome of reward for risk. You risk yourself with the totems and you risk resetting everything. But if you can keep the opponent trapped in long animations and keep them trapped in situations they're not used to, you're gonna get your health back. And Kotal is scary with health because he has more health than everybody else in the game, for crying out loud. One of the best things to actually do for this is to actually do a crushing blow throw, especially with the sun up. Because look at all the health I got. I got almost 20% of my health back, and I did more damage. So, a little thing to keep in mind. And yes, that means with Fatal Blow, you'll be able to, if you end a long combo with Fatal Blow, you'll be able to get more health back. And I might show that off at the end of this video. But now let's move on to Bullock. This variation is short, but hella sweet, even though it technically receives quite the nerf. It was really a normalization, because before this thing was just busted. And it cements Totemic as my go-to Kotal variation now. First, let's talk about the basic thing. Yaya Kami Disc has an Amplify. But here's the stupid thing. In NetherRealm's infinite wisdom and eternal confusion, at least for me, they made it this. They made it the double hit, which can now be parried. This can crushing blow, and this receives the buff to allow him to crushing blow if this beats a projectile at about that range. But Kotal has a Sunbeam totem, or has a Sunbeam amplifier for Yaya Kame Disc on Amplify that crushing blows if you have 3 totems up. And this is all about totems, so why didn't they give... So, I'd like to know why they did not give Kotal the Sunbeam Amplify. Why did they give it this one? Did they think it would be too broken? I don't know, but if they ever want to patch Bullock, I highly recommend they change which Amplify that he gets. I'd recommend just giving him the Sunbeam so he has another Crushing Blow, because that Crushing Blow is actually pretty sweet. But maybe we'll talk about that another time. Ammo Quali. This totem buffs Kotal's damage by 20% with 1, 40% with 2, and 60% with 3. Yes, 60% more damage. Look at that, I didn't even have to try. And let's suppose that the opponent breaks away. And I didn't fuck up the input. I get about the same amount of damage. And don't forget, he gets more damage in the sun as well, extra 20%. So, he basically gets double damage when everything is all stacked like this, and he's standing in the sun. Kotal gets double damage. Hello, 60% damage! How's it going today? Look at that! No, 1 bar of meter, technically a quarter of a bar because of the regen, and I almost killed her. Jesus! But then there's Teotika, which is a lot slower, but reduces the damage Kotal takes by 20, 40, and then 60%. So, if I were to have Jade perform a back throw on me, right, and let's say I had all 3 of these totems set up. Remember, I started from 341. So, I started from 31%. I actually gain a net benefit of health. It's not much, but what's supposed to be 14% damage, even with the sun, even without the sun, this throw only did about 10% damage to me. It only did, or is it 10%? No, it's 5% on Kotal Kahn. And what's more, remember, because of the sun being up, if I get the sun up, she actually loses a lot, because not only is she risking her neck, taking, you know, a certain amount of damage, about 7% guaranteed, I actually gain a little bit of health. I gain health because she wanted to throw me with these totems. These totems are underrated. The only reason why they're not gonna see much play is there used to be a glitch, or there used to be a thing where you could do 1 of these, and then 2 of these, and then gain the net benefit of them both at 3 stacks. 60% less damage and 60% more damage. That, of course, couldn't stand because that was obscene. So now you have to mix and match. Now I'm taking 20% less damage, but I'm dishing 40% more damage. You know what I mean? Because of those 2 stacks there. So I have to mix and match smartly. And what I would recommend is I would actually launch an opponent, then go for defense, and then if the opponent isn't respecting you, just do this, then set up the sun. They can't do anything, even with only 40% up. I still lose health, but they're taking more damage. They're taking more damage from the sun, and I save my skin by being just within Fatal Blow range. That's the awesome power of Buluk. Now let's talk Fatal Blow. This was buffed so that it hits consistently. It's a double hitting mid, and goes into some pretty good damage in and of itself. Despite how it looked and how it was in pre-alpha, or in the beta build, in some of the beta builds for Combat Cast, this second hit is not an overhead. And before we go, I'm going to talk again about Totemic because, again, a prime example of what I'm talking about is here with Totemic. So I'm going to set Kotal's health to 25% so I can guarantee this setup. Okay? So I'm going to set this up, set this up, set this up, get the sun up, go. Okay, maybe I'll set it to 1. I'll actually set it to 1% because that way it's actually guaranteed. So I have 1% health. Send the sun. So I gain 11%. I gain a full 10% of my health from the sun, and I gain an extra like 40 to 45% of my health because I went for the Fatal Blow and it popped the totems. And look, Jay took half health. So if you really like comebacks, I think Totemic Kotal is the variation for you. Hell, I think Totemic Kotal is the variation for you if you're dealing with Emerald Defender Jade. I feel like Kotal stops Jade in a lot of different ways. So if you see a Jade online, pick up Kotal. They were forced to be lovers in the story mode, but Kotal is a hell of a counter for Jade in online. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to be awesome, and I'll see you guys on the other side.